Emily Carter stood in front of her bedroom mirror, holding her wedding dress delicately in her hands. The soft ivory fabric shimmered as sunlight filtered through her Chicago apartment window, casting a warm glow across the room. She had dreamt of this moment since she was a little girl. The day she would finally walk down the aisle to marry David Miller, the man she loved more than anyone in the world. Everything was supposed to be perfect. The venue was booked at Lakeview Manor, one of the most elegant wedding halls in the city. The flowers had been delivered, white roses and peonies, just as Emily had always wanted. The catering company was already setting up the champagne fountain and three-tier cake. Yet, despite all the beauty surrounding her, a knot of unease twisted in Emily's stomach. Her sister, Jessica. Emily tried to shake the thought, but it crept in again like a shadow she couldn't escape. Jessica had always been complicated, beautiful, charming, and confident, but also manipulative, jealous, and unpredictable. Growing up, Jessica had never let Emily enjoy a single moment of the spotlight. Birthdays, graduations, even Emily's first job promotion, Jessica somehow always managed to turn the attention toward herself. Now, on the eve of Emily's wedding, the unease returned stronger than ever. Emily sat down on the edge of her bed, the dress draped across her lap. She closed her eyes and remembered a dozen little moments from childhood. Jessica blowing out Emily's birthday candles, Jessica flirting with Emily's high school boyfriend, Jessica mocking Emily's achievements in front of relatives. But this time, Emily told herself, things were different. This was her wedding day. Jessica couldn't ruin it. Not this one. At least, that's what Emily tried to believe. Later that afternoon, Emily met with her maid of honor, her best friend Claire, to finalize the seating arrangements. Claire sipped her iced latte and leaned over the table. Everything's falling into place, Em. Tomorrow's going to be perfect. You'll be the most beautiful bride Chicago has ever seen. Emily smiled faintly, but Claire caught the hesitation in her eyes. What's wrong? Claire asked. Emily fiddled with her engagement ring. It's Jessica. She's been strange lately. She's been making little comments, jokes, about how maybe David should have chosen her instead of me. I keep telling myself she's not serious, but you know how she is. Claire set down her drink, her eyes narrowing. That girl lives for drama. You can't let her get to you. I know, Emily said softly. It's just, she's my sister. Part of me wants to believe she'll finally be happy for me. Claire reached across the table and squeezed her hand. Emily, focus on yourself. This is your moment. Don't let her ruin it. Emily nodded, but a shiver still crawled down her spine. That evening, David came by to drop off a small gift before the rehearsal dinner. He was tall, handsome, with the kind of calm presence that made Emily feel safe no matter how chaotic things became. He handed her a small velvet box. Inside was a delicate silver bracelet engraved with the words, "Forever yours." Emily's eyes welled with tears. David, it's beautiful. He smiled. I just wanted you to know that tomorrow, nothing else matters but you and me. No drama, no distractions, just us. Emily threw her arms around him, burying her face in his chest. Promise me, no matter what happens, we'll stand together. David kissed her forehead. Always. But, even as Emily clung to David's words, Jessica was plotting. In her own apartment across town, Jessica stood in front of her mirror, twirling a glass of wine in her hand. Her eyes fell on Emily's wedding invitation lying crumpled on the dresser. She picked it up, sneered, and whispered bitterly. Emily Carter, soon to be Emily Miller. She doesn't deserve this. She doesn't deserve him. That should have been my life. Her gaze shifted to her phone, where she had secretly taken a photo of Emily's wedding dress weeks ago. A wicked smile spread across her face. "Let's see how perfect your wedding is, Emily. When I take the one thing you love most." The night before the wedding, Emily tried to sleep but tossed and turned. Every creak of the apartment, every sound outside, felt ominous. She finally drifted off sometime after midnight, clutching her grandmother's rosary in her hand for comfort. But across town, Jessica was wide awake. She poured herself another drink, rehearsing the words she might say, the grand entrance she might make, the chaos she might cause. Emily dreamed of walking down the aisle in her perfect dress. Jessica dreamed of stealing that moment from her. And as dawn approached, neither sister could imagine just how explosive the next day would become. From the outside, the Carter sisters looked like the perfect American family duo. Emily, the dependable and soft-spoken younger daughter, and Jessica, the bold, outgoing older sister. Their childhood photos told a different story, though, one of forced smiles and quiet battles hidden beneath polished appearances. Growing up in a cozy suburban home just outside of Chicago, Emily always felt like she was living in Jessica's shadow. Jessica was the girl who walked into a room and instantly drew all eyes. Teachers adored her confidence, classmates admired her beauty, and relatives spoiled her with praise. Emily, on the other hand, was quieter, more thoughtful. She loved books, art, and long walks near the lake. She didn't need constant attention, but that didn't mean she didn't crave recognition once in a while. And yet, every time Emily achieved something, Jessica seemed determined to take it away. Emily sat in front of her cake, ready to blow out her candles. Just as she leaned forward, Jessica swooped in, puffed out her cheeks, and blew them out first. The room erupted with laughter. Adults clapped, thinking it was harmless sibling teasing. Emily forced a smile, but inside she felt a small sting. Her mother brushed it off. "Oh, Jessica, let your sister have her moment." But the damage was done. For Emily, it became a pattern. At 16, Emily landed her first part-time job at a local bakery. She was proud, saving money for college, proving her independence. But when she excitedly told her parents over dinner, Jessica smirked. "Oh, that's cute. I just got promoted to assistant manager at the boutique downtown. Much better pay." The spotlight immediately shifted. Emily poked at her food, her excitement dimmed. Jessica always had a way of making Emily's achievements feel small. In her sophomore year, Emily finally gathered the courage to introduce her boyfriend, Jason, to her family. She was nervous but hopeful. She wanted them to see she was capable of finding love on her own terms. But 2 weeks later, Emily caught Jessica texting Jason late at night. When Emily confronted her, Jessica laughed. "Relax, Em. He's just more fun to talk to. If you can't keep him interested, that's your problem." The relationship ended shortly after. Emily never told her parents the real reason. Why? Back in the present, Emily sat at her vanity, brushing her hair as memories flooded back. She had always tried to forgive Jessica, always convinced herself that her sister would eventually grow out of her jealousy. But deep down, Emily knew better. Jessica's envy wasn't a phase. It was who she was. Emily sighed, setting the brush down. She whispered to her reflection, "Not tomorrow, not my wedding. She won't take this from me." Meanwhile, across town, Jessica sat in her own apartment, flipping through old family photo albums. Her eyes lingered on the pictures where Emily looked happy, her college graduation, her engagement party, her bridal shower. Jessica's jaw tightened. Everyone always pitied little Emily, she muttered to herself. The shy one, the sweet one. And now she's the one marrying David? No, that should have been me. She closed the album with a snap. Her resentment wasn't new. It was decades in the making. And tomorrow, she intended to prove that Emily's perfect day was nothing more than a fragile dream she could shatter with a single act. That night, while Emily clung to hope, Jessica clung to hatred. And the I.O. rivalry that had started with birthday candles and teenage crushes was about to reach its most devastating climax. The night before her wedding, Emily sat on the balcony of her Chicago apartment, staring at the city lights twinkling in the distance. The cool summer breeze brushed against her skin, but it did little to calm the storm of thoughts racing through her mind. Tomorrow was supposed to be the happiest day of her life, the day she finally became David's wife, but an uneasiness lingered inside her like a warning she couldn't ignore. Her phone buzzed. A text from Jessica. Just 4 words. Hope you're ready tomorrow. Emily frowned. The message looked harmless, but something about the tone unsettled her. There was no smiley face, no warmth, just a sharp edge that felt more like a threat than a wish. She typed back a cautious reply, of course, can't wait. But Jessica never responded. Later that evening, Emily's best friend Claire came over with a bottle of sparkling cider to celebrate. They sat in the living room, surrounded by piles of wedding decorations and half-packed gift bags. Claire raised her glass. To the bride-to-be. Tomorrow, everything changes. Emily smiled faintly and clinked her glass against Claire's. Everything changes, she repeated, though her voice carried more nerves than excitement. Claire tilted her head. Em, you should be over the moon right now. Why do you look like you're about to face a firing squad? Emily hesitated, then sighed. It's Jessica. She's been strange. All week she's made these little comments, snide remarks about how David looks at me, about how she could have done better. And tonight she sends me this weird text. Claire set her glass down firmly. Jessica has always been jealous of you. That's not new. But she wouldn't ruin your wedding, would she? Emily looked down at her hands, twisting the bracelet David had given her the night before. I don't know anymore. She's unpredictable. I can't shake the feeling that something's coming. Claire reached across the couch, gripping Emily's hand. Listen to me. Tomorrow is your day. Jessica can throw all the shade she wants, but she can't take away what you and David have. Focus on that. Emily nodded, forcing a small smile. You're right, I'm probably overthinking. But inside, she knew her instincts had never been wrong before. Meanwhile, across town, Jessica was pacing her bedroom like a restless predator. Her phone buzzed with notifications, friends confirming they'd see her at the wedding, cousins asking what she'd be wearing. She typed back vague answers, all while her eyes lingered on the garment bag hanging from her closet. Inside that bag was Emily's wedding dress. Jessica's lips curled into a smile as she unzipped it slightly, revealing the ivory, lace that shimmered in the dim light. She ran her hand over the fabric, closing her eyes as though she were already the bride. Tomorrow, Emily, you'll learn what it feels like to be invisible, she whispered to herself. She poured herself a glass of red wine, lifted it high in mock celebration, and toasted her reflection in the mirror to the real star of tomorrow's show. Back at Emily's apartment, the hours dragged by. After Claire left, Emily tried to distract herself by rereading her vows. The words were filled with love, with promises of forever, but her mind kept drifting back to her sister. At midnight, Emily finally crawled into bed, exhaustion weighing down her body. She closed her eyes, praying that sleep would wash away her worries. But even in her dreams, she saw Jessica, smiling in a way that felt more like mockery than joy. She dreamed of walking down the aisle, only to find Jessica already standing at the altar in her place. The guests clapped, David smiled, and Emily stood frozen, voiceless, as her entire life was stolen before her eyes. She woke with a start, her heart pounding, sweat dripping down her temples. The clock read 3:17 a.m. Emily sat up, clutching her blanket tightly. It was just a nightmare, she told herself. Just nerves. But the unease didn't fade. It grew stronger. At 6 a.m., the morning sun poured into her bedroom. Emily rose, determined to push through the fear. Today was her wedding day. No matter what Jessica tried, Emily promised herself she wouldn't let it be ruined. She opened her closet to check her dress one last time, only to freeze. The garment bag was gone. Her breath caught in her throat. She pulled every hanger, checked under the bed, searched every corner of her room. Nothing. Her wedding dress had vanished. Panic surged through her body. She grabbed her phone and dialed Claire, her hands trembling. Claire, the dress, it's gone. It's not here. Someone took it. Claire's voice on the other end was sharp. Emily, calm down. Are you sure? Maybe it was moved? No, Emily whispered, her voice breaking. It's gone. And I think I know who took it. And across town, Jessica stood before her mirror, slipping into the ivory gown that wasn't hers. She twirled slowly, admiring the way the fabric hugged her curves, how regal she looked, how much she resembled the bride she had always imagined herself to be. She laughed softly, almost giddy. Sorry, little sister, she murmured to her reflection, but this is my moment now. And as church bells rang in the distance, announcing the start of Emily's big day, Jessica smiled with satisfaction. The sabotage had only just begun. The morning sun streamed through Emily's window, but instead of joy, panic consumed her. She stood frozen in front of her empty closet, her chest heaving, her hands trembling as if the ground had been pulled out from under her. The garment bag, the one thing she had protected so carefully, was gone. Her wedding dress, the very symbol of her dreams, vanished. Emily's phone slipped from her sweaty palms as she whispered in disbelief, No, this can't be happening. She pulled open drawers, checked under the bed, even rushed to the laundry room, her heart hammering, her breath shallow. But deep down she knew this wasn't an accident. Her phone rang. It was Claire. Emily answered with a shaky voice. It's gone, Claire. My dress, it's gone. Someone stole it. Claire's voice was urgent, trying to calm her. Emily, listen to me. We'll fix this. We'll find another dress. Don't lose it now. Breathe. But Emily shook her head, tears streaming down her cheeks. No, Claire. I know who took it. Jessica. She's the only one who would do this. At that moment, her phone buzzed again. A text message appeared on the screen. From Jessica. It was a picture of Jessica wearing Emily's dress, smiling smugly into the mirror. The caption read, Doesn't it look better on me? Emily gasped, her knees nearly giving out. Rage, humiliation, and heartbreak all collided inside her chest. She pressed the phone against her forehead, shaking with anger. Claire's voice came through the speaker, sharp and furious. She didn't. Tell me she didn't. She did, Emily whispered, her voice cracking. She actually did. Across town, Jessica strutted in front of her mirror, admiring herself in the stolen gown. The delicate lace glimmered under the morning light as she spun gracefully. She sipped champagne straight from the bottle, her laughter echoing in her empty apartment. Finally, she whispered, finally, I get to be the star. Meanwhile, Emily's parents arrived at her apartment, alarmed after Claire called them. Her mother rushed to her side, wrapping her in a tight embrace. Oh, Emily, sweetheart, we'll fix this. You're still going to have the wedding of your dreams. But Emily could barely hear her. All she saw in her mind was Jessica, smirking, parading in her dress as if she had won. David called soon after, his voice steady but worried. "Emily, I don't care what she's done. We'll get through this. With or without that dress, you're still the woman I'm marrying today." Emily wiped her tears, forcing herself to breathe. "But David, she's going to show up. I know she will. She's going to try to ruin everything." David's tone hardened. "Then let her try. We'll stand together. She can't break us." Back at the venue, chaos was unfolding. Guests were arriving, whispering about the strange rumors already circulating. Some claimed they had seen Jessica driving toward the church early. Others whispered that the sisters were fighting again. The air buzzed with tension, the kind of tension that spreads before a storm. Emily, now dressed hastily in her grandmother's vintage gown, cream silk with delicate pearl buttons, looked at her reflection in the mirror. It wasn't the dress she had dreamed of, but in that moment, it became her armor. She pressed her lips together, determination flickering in her tear-stained eyes. "She won't take this day from me. Not this time." Her father stepped into the room, his voice low but strong. "Emily, you are my daughter, and today you are a bride. Walk out there with your head held high. Don't let her see you break." Emily nodded, taking his arm. "Let's do this." But across the city, Jessica was already making her way to the venue, draped in ivory, lace, her lips painted red, her heels clicking against the pavement. She imagined the gasps, the stares, the chaos she would create. And she smiled. Because to Jessica, this wasn't Emily's wedding anymore. It was hers. I walked into the kitchen the next morning, my heart pounding. Mom was at the counter, calmly stirring her coffee, as if the night before hadn't happened. "Good morning," I muttered. She didn't look up. "Morning." I waited for her to say something, anything about what happened, but she didn't. Finally, I snapped. "Why didn't you say anything last night? Why didn't you stop them?" She placed her spoon down and sighed. "Because I knew you'd turn it into drama, Emily. It was just a birthday, not the end of the world." Not the end of the world? It was my life. "Mom, I'm your daughter. How could you sit there and let them laugh at me like that?" Her eyes flicked toward me, cold. "You've always been too sensitive. That's your problem." My problem? My problem was a family that acted like I didn't exist. Tears burned my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. "You know what? Maybe you're right. Maybe I am too sensitive, but at least I care. At least I try." Her silence was louder than words. I turned and walked out, slamming the door behind me. That was the first time I realized my mom wasn't going to protect me. She never had. And she never would. The weeks that followed were heavy. I barely spoke to my family. They barely noticed. Until the day of my sister's birthday. She had been bragging about it for weeks. A huge ballroom downtown, 150 guests, a DJ, a 5-tier cake. And guess who was expected to organize it all? Me. I stared at the list she had shoved into my hands. "Emily, you're good at planning. You'll handle it, right?" she said sweetly. For a moment, I thought about saying yes, about swallowing my anger just to keep the hiss. But then I remembered all those years, all those forgotten birthdays, the laughter, the silence, the way my mom had looked at me that morning. "No," I said firmly. Her smile froze. "What do you mean, no?" "I mean, I'm not doing it. Not this year. Not ever again." Her eyes narrowed. "Don't be selfish. This is important to me." Selfish. That word cut deep, because for years, I had been anything but selfish. I've been the one setting tables, blowing balloons, staying up until 2 a.m. baking cakes you never thanked me for. And you call me selfish? Her face turned red. You'll regret this. But I didn't regret it. Not one bit. When the day finally arrived, I stayed home. I didn't step foot in that ballroom. And as I later heard, 150 guests walked into an empty hall. No food, no music, no decorations, nothing. For once, it wasn't my fault. For once, the silence was theirs to bear. The phone rang nonstop that night. First my sister, then my mom, then my dad. Voicemails poured in, angry and frantic. How could you do this to your family, Emily? You humiliated us in front of everyone. You're so ungrateful after everything we've done for you. Ungrateful. That was the word they kept using. I sat on my bed, phone in hand, listening to their rage. And for the first time, I didn't cry. I laughed, because the truth was finally out. They didn't care about me. They cared about the show, about their reputation. The next morning, I walked downstairs to face them. My sister was pacing the living room, her eyes blazing. "You ruined my life," she screamed. I raised an eyebrow. "I ruined your life? Or did you ruin mine by pretending I didn't exist for 26 years? She froze. My mom gasped. My dad shook his head. But I wasn't done. "Do you know what it feels like to sit alone every year while you all sing and celebrate each other? Do you know what it's like to wonder if maybe, just maybe, someone will remember you, and then realize they never will?" Silence filled the room. I continued, my voice steady. "I gave you all my time, my effort, my love. And you gave me nothing. So yes, I let your ballroom stay empty. Because that's what you gave me. Nothing." My sister's lip trembled, but no words came out. My mom finally whispered, "Emily, please." "No," I cut her off. "Don't ask me to fix what you broke. Don't ask me to carry this family anymore. I'm done." And with that, I turned and walked out. The door slammed behind me, but this time, it felt like freedom. The days after the confrontation felt strangely quiet. For the first time in years, I didn't wake up with the weight of responsibility on my shoulders. No party planning, no running around to clean up someone else's mess, no pretending I was okay. But the quiet also left space for the anger to echo louder. My phone kept buzzing. Relatives, cousins, even neighbors. Everyone wanted to know why I had humiliated my family. Some called me selfish. Some called me dramatic. A few whispered that maybe I had finally lost my mind. But none of them asked the real question. None of them asked, why did Emily break? One evening, I sat alone on the porch, staring at the fading sunset. The sky was orange, fading into gray. My heart felt the same. I remembered my 6th birthday. I had dressed myself up in a little blue dress, hoping maybe that year would be different. I had even made paper crowns for everyone to wear. But when I brought them to the table, my dad laughed. "We don't have time for this nonsense, Emily. Sit down." The memory stung fresh, like it had just happened yesterday. And that was when I realized this wasn't just about the ballroom. This wasn't just about one night of revenge. This was about years of being invisible. Years of waiting for someone to say, "We see you, we love you." But they never had. And I knew then I couldn't keep waiting. That night I sat at my desk with a blank sheet of paper in front of me. For years I had swallowed words I wanted to scream, but now I let them spill out. "Dear family," I began. I wrote about every birthday they forgot. Every tear I cried alone in my room. Every time I had baked cakes for them, decorated halls for them, sung songs for them, while they gave me nothing in return. I reminded them of the empty chairs, the empty silences, the empty stares. I told them about the night I sat at the kitchen table, waiting for just one candle, one song, one card, and got none. And finally, I told them about the ballroom, about how, for once, they had felt what I felt every year, the emptiness. By the time I was done, 10 pages were filled with my handwriting. 10 pages of truth they had ignored for decades. I sealed it in an envelope and placed it on the kitchen counter the next morning. When they read it, I didn't stick around. I grabbed my bag, walked out the door, and drove. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew it had to be far. I ended up 2 hours away, in a small coastal town I had visited once as a child. The salty breeze hit my face as I stepped out of the car. For the first time in forever, I felt like I could breathe. I rented a tiny apartment above a cafe. The walls were bare, the furniture was old, but it was mine. And for once, that was enough. Every morning, I walked to the pier with a cup of coffee, watching the waves crash against the shore. Nobody there knew me as the girl whose family forgot her birthday. Nobody saw me as the invisible daughter. Here, I was just Emily. I started writing. Not letters to my family this time, but to myself. Pages filled with promises. I will not shrink myself to fit into their silence. I will celebrate my own life, even if nobody else does. I will not wait for permission to be happy. And slowly, something shifted. I joined a local art class. I laughed with strangers who became friends. I baked a cake for myself on my 27th birthday, lit the candles, and sang alone in my little kitchen. And you know what? It didn't feel sad. It felt powerful. Because that night, for the first time in my life, I realized I didn't need them to celebrate me. I could celebrate myself. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. I packed away the last box of things I had brought with me, setting it neatly in the corner of the little apartment. The quiet hum of the cafe downstairs floated up through the floor, and for the first time in my life, silence didn't feel like punishment. It felt like peace. Days turned into weeks, and slowly, I began to notice something inside me I had never felt before. Freedom. I could wake up whenever I wanted, eat whatever I wanted, walk along the pier without anyone calling me back to clean, to cook, to plan someone else's celebration. For the first time, my life belonged to me. Still, there were nights when the old wounds came back. I would lie awake, remembering the faces of my family, the laughter that excluded me, the look on my mother's face when she dismissed my pain. Sometimes I wondered if they missed me at all, but then I would remind myself, it didn't matter anymore. Their absence had taught me strength. One evening, I was sketching in my notebook when a woman at the cafe leaned over. "That's beautiful," she said with a smile. Her name was Claire, and she owned the flower shop next door. We talked for hours that night, about art, about small-town life, about dreams. For the first time, I felt seen without having to beg for it. Claire introduced me to her friends, and soon my evenings were filled with laughter around tables where everyone listened, where everyone cared. Each smile they gave me stitched up a piece of my heart that had been torn apart for years. But even as I built this new life, part of me knew the storm at home was still raging. My sister's angry voicemails had stopped, but I knew it wasn't over. One morning, I opened my mailbox to find a thick envelope with my mother's handwriting. My chest tightened as I carried it upstairs. I sat at the table for nearly an hour, staring at it, unsure if I had the strength to read her words. Finally, I tore it open. Inside were pages covered in her neat script. She wrote about how humiliated she felt, how disappointed she was, how I had embarrassed the family beyond repair. But buried between the blame and the guilt, there were words. I had never expected. I didn't realize how much I had hurt you. For a moment, I froze. My mother, the woman who had always dismissed me, silenced me, ignored me, had admitted it. Not perfectly, not gently, but still. It was there in ink, a sliver of recognition. I cried that night, not from sadness, but from a strange mixture of grief and relief. Because even if it came too late, even if it couldn't erase the years of emptiness, it was proof that I had finally been heard. Still, I knew better than to run back. Words on paper weren't enough to undo decades of neglect. Forgiveness wasn't a switch I could flip overnight. So instead of replying, I tucked the letter away in a drawer. I whispered to myself, "Not yet. Maybe one day, but not yet." The next morning, as the sun rose over the ocean, I stood on the pier with coffee in hand. The waves crashed hard against the rocks, but I didn't flinch. For once, the storm outside didn't scare me, because the storm inside me had finally begun to calm. I realized then that family isn't always blood. Sometimes it's the people who show up, who notice when you're quiet, who bring flowers to your door just because. Sometimes family is the life you choose, not the one you're born into. And as I breathed in the salt air, I knew I was finally free. The knock on my door came just after sunset. I hesitated before opening it, expecting maybe Claire or one of the neighbors. But when I pulled it open, my father stood there. For a moment, neither of us spoke. He looked older than I remembered, his shoulders slumped, his eyes heavy. He held his hat in his hands like a boy caught in trouble. "Emily," he said softly, "can we talk?" I wanted to slam the door. I wanted to scream, but instead I stepped aside. He sat at my little kitchen table, staring at the chipped surface as if it held the words he couldn't say. Finally, he looked up. "I didn't realize what we were doing to you," he admitted. "I thought you were strong enough. I thought you didn't need all that fuss." "All that fuss?" I whispered. "You mean love? You mean acknowledgement?" His face crumbled. "Yes." The silence stretched, broken only by the ticking of the clock on the wall. For the first time in my life, I saw regret in his eyes. Real regret. Not anger, not dismissal, just a man who knew he had failed his daughter. He reached across the table, but I didn't take his hand. Not yet. "I can't fix the past," he said, "but if you'll let me, I'd like to try with what's left of the future." My throat tightened. Part of me wanted to believe him. Part of me wanted to shove him out and never look back. That night, after he left, I walked down to the pier again. The waves roared against the wood, the ocean restless, untamed, just like me. I realized something then. He was right about one thing. The past couldn't be fixed, but the future was still unwritten. A week later, I mailed him a letter, short, simple. "I'm not ready to come back, but I'm willing to talk, on my terms." And as I dropped the envelope into the box, I felt lighter. Because for the first time, I wasn't begging for love. I wasn't waiting for someone to remember me. I was setting the rules. I was deciding what kind of family I would accept in my life. On my 28th birthday, I baked another cake. This time, Claire and a few friends from town crowded into my tiny apartment. We laughed until our sides hurt, frosting smeared across our cheeks. They sang loudly, terribly, and I blew out the candles with tears in my eyes. Not tears of loneliness. Not tears of pain, but tears of gratitude. Because after 26 forgotten years, I finally had a birthday that mattered. And as I looked around the room, I understood the lesson life had forced me to learn. Sometimes you have To lose the family you were born into to find the one you truly deserve.